Hello there. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. Every Friday we sit down and chat about a case that we feel has an important message that can help others in similar situations, save a life, change mindsets, or even contribute in changing laws. But before we dive in, here's a little side note. Every bit of information, images or footage was compiled from what's available online, or if we were lucky in some cases, from the very people closest to the case. All opinions expressed are our own. We mean absolutely no disrespect. So don't click out and stay a while. Hey everyone, welcome to the first season of our Pretty Criminal channel. This season's unladylike investigation is all about stalking, where we cover 12 unbelievable cases that you may or may not be familiar with over 24 episodes. The reason we picked this particular topic as our first is because we are actively taking part in the 24 challenges Put an End to Stalking for the Alice Ruggles Trust. Using our podcast as a platform to contribute to the cause by educating, creating awareness, spreading information, and hopefully raise some funds through the Just Giving page, which will be linked on our Facebook page, to help the Trust achieve all the wonderful steps they are taking to change the law and provide the right tools to combat this awful crime that most often than not goes unrecognized until some serious harm comes to the person involved. Who is Alice, you might ask? Alice's case is the one that hits closest to home. Therefore, we are keeping hers last so we can prepare everything we need and hopefully have Sue, her mum, join in the conversation to give us a better insight and a little more information about the trust and all the good work they are doing. It is estimated that 1.2 million women and 900,000 men in England and Wales are victims of stalking and harassment each year. Take a second and let this number sink in. Let's say even that there are 900,000 stalkers who have been stalking these people each year. I doubt that we have had 900,000 stalkers being put through the court system and judged and sentenced so they can be put away and victims out of harm's way. If you think about that very seriously, what it tells you is that there are people out there right this minute as we speak who are committing those offenses, walking free to do whatever they like, however they like, whenever they like, to whomever they like. And that's something that we need to be very, very afraid of. What I was talking about now was the UK and, England and Wales. Rachel is from the States. So let's move on to Rachel and talk about what's happening in the States with regards to stalking as a crime.
An estimated 13.5 million people are stalked in a one-year period in the United States. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men have experienced stalking at some point in their life. More than half of all victims of stalking indicate that they were stalked before the age of 25. 1 in 4 were stalked before the age of 18. It usually happens by somebody they know. The interesting thing about living in the States or being from there is that stalking is a crime in all 50 states. However, fewer than 1/3 of states classify stalking as a felony in all circumstances, including on the first offense. More than half of all states classify stalking as a felony upon just the second offense. And this includes when the crime involves aggravating factors, which are things such as possession of a deadly weapon, violation of a court order or probation, parole, and victims under 16 years of age.
This sounds crazy to me because In other words, what the law is literally saying is, unless you are harmed or close to being harmed.
Oh no, unless you are harmed.
Okay, so not even close. So think about it. Do you not think that this is the reason why a lot of the stalking cases go unreported?
Yeah, I do. At least one of many reasons.
It's ridiculous when you think about it. And this is the reason why we're talking about this today, because it's an important subject. Not just, as we can see here, not just in the UK, not just in America. I mean, stalking happens all over the world. Unfortunately, we don't have access with every single case that's happening around the world. And this is a call out to you who are listening from wherever you are. If you do have a case, it needs to have a little bit more awareness or attention, like you said. Please give us a shout. We will plug in our email address and our contact details at the end of this podcast. So contact us, talk to us. We'll be very happy to work with you and report on the case wherever you are in France. Little side note, I speak French, so do not worry if you do not speak English fluently. We're okay with that. And Rachel here speaks about six languages. Yeah, so it doesn't matter to us. Just contact us and we will sort it out, and we'll be happy to shine a light upon your case. Now,
or an international podcast.
Exactly. This was quite an interesting statistics to look at when you're looking at the percentage of women or the number of women and men.
Let me bring this point out. When I was doing my research, it showed me that 80% of male stalking victims were threatened with physical harm, but 69% of women.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, just you would have never thought that 80% of men, you would think it's the other way around.
Yeah. Again, now when you're thinking about it, does it mean that they're threatening bodily harm, physical harm to a man because they see the gender as you are stronger, therefore you can take it? Or do they feel that level of rejection with men is much stronger? But you also have to note that there is also this perception that, how do I say that, in the male community, if you might say, of this certain level of macho-ness where you would be a little bit ashamed or maybe shy about saying, hey, you know what, I'm being stalked. And very often you would hear, if a man says to another man, hey, there's this woman stalking me, very often you would hear the man respond, oh, lucky guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't get taken so seriously when it's a man, because you should be feeling lucky that there is a woman pursuing you.
Yeah, you should be flattered.
Exactly. So I think there is more of a stigma onto men being stalked, if I dare say.
Yeah, which is perfect for the case that we're going to be talking about today.
Exactly. So we're going to start off the case in just a couple of seconds. Stay with us. And today's case is about the malicious stalking inflicted on Dr. Jan Falkowski and Deborah Pemberton. Dr. Jan Falkowski, a then 45-year-old psychiatrist, former UN peacekeeper, and a record-breaking powerboat racer, became the target of a vicious stalker when Dr. Jan Falkowski, a consultant psychiatrist for St. Clement's Hospital in Bow, East London, started treating a gentleman named George Attard for 30 minutes every 2 to 3 months. It is during one of these consultations that the first encounter between him and his stalker occurred. The good doctor, seemingly unaware of the unhealthy obsession developing in his regard, the divorced doctor and father of two, to a then 19-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter, whose names we should not mention to protect their identity and privacy. The doctor, who was unattached at the time of the initial encounters with his stalker, went on to meet a lovely lady named Deborah Pemberton in January 2002. Little did they both know that this relationship would be the catalyst of a prolonged case of harassment and viciousness. The unsuspecting couple spent a fair amount of time on Dr. Jan Falkowski's barge/houseboat called Mad Pals, which was moored at Limehouse in East London. The rest of their time was spent at Deborah's flat near the seaside in Poole, Dorset. As their relationship intensified, so did their shadowy stalker's obsession. One day, in October 2002, Deborah received a call from a foreign-sounding woman asking for the doctor's mobile number. Without a second thought, Deborah gave it out. That very day, when the pair were making their way to Dorset, to Deborah's flat in Poole, Jan receives a strange text stating, "Your voice will comfort me. You will never know how much I feel for you in the last 4 years." Although odd, they didn't give it much thought, probably dismissing it as a wrong number. However, over the course of a few hours, Jan's phone was flooded with over 20 odd text messages. Still, the pair dismissed the incident on account of silly pranks.
The person sending these messages, Argentinian-born Maria Marchesi. She was 45 years old at the time, born in 1961. She arrived in the UK at age 17 in 1978. By 1997, she started dating George, which was the patient, or I should say now former patient, of Dr. Jan Falkowski. Dr. Jan Falkowski treated her then partner every 2 to 3 months for only 30 minutes at a session. And in fact, he was only a consultant at this hospital that George was being treated at. Maria met Jan only a handful of times.
I mean, from what we've been researching, it seems to me that it only took that one time for her to start developing this infatuation about him, don't you think?
Most definitely. I think that, like what we were talking about in the beginning of the episode, delusion plays a big part.
Isn't it funny how she's in a relationship with someone, right? She's in a relationship with George Attard, which it seems like they've been together for a few years.
Yeah, in 1997 she started dating George, but if we look at when the stalking begins, it's in early 2000s.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's dating this guy at least for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and that's what's beyond me. How can you be with somebody in a serious relationship and still develop this severe case of obsession about somebody else? But hey, we don't know what was going on in her relationship at the time, but however...
Or what George was being treated for.
Well, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Falkowski was, at the time, he was consulting on severe depression case, so we could probably assume...
Speculate that was...
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, after the case of his phone being flooded with text messages, they dismissed it, thinking, it's just a prank. And then nothing happened. But then some weeks later, the phone calls started, with the caller remaining completely silent, although the doctor could hear the sounds of traffic and railway stations in the background. The silence make it a little bit more... It is creepy, isn't it? And I assume when you're on the phone, you can hear someone breathing or something, like, But anyway, so the one time the calls became so annoying that Deborah, who was right next to Jan Falkowski, I suppose, she picked up the phone and she yelled. Now, this was a trigger. It caused the caller to break her silence for the first time.
Now, do we know how many calls?
At that time?
Yeah, before Like, how many calls a day? How many calls?
Not particularly at that time. I have the information for later on, but it's safe to assume that it was quite a lot because it was starting to be a bit of an annoyance. And I assume it was not just impeding on, their private time together, but his work life and everything. So Deborah immediately recognized the voice as the same foreign-sounding woman who had actually called her to ask for the doctor's phone number. So she recognized the voice, but she doesn't know who it is.
No, she didn't put two and two together yet.
Well, she never met her, because let's not forget that the stalker met Dr. Falkowski only a handful of time, and that was during his work environment. Whilst he was treating George, she was accompanying sometimes. So it's safe to assume that Deborah never actually met that woman.
No, and when you say accompanied, I'm getting the feeling more of like she maybe dropped him off. What do you think?
Well, the first time, when the first encounter happened, he was in the middle of his consultation with George when she knocked on the door. And he was slightly annoyed by this because, you're a doctor, you're consulting a patient. This is a psychiatric situation. And you wouldn't quite interrupt the consultation, right? So he said, I'm busy. And the knock kept, persisting. So he opened the door, and that's the very first contact, the very first eye contact between him and this lady. Maria. And so at that time she apologized and said, well, I came to pick up George and I'm a little early, I'm sorry.
Okay, so do you think that was her way of initially making contact, or do you think that she didn't think anything of it then?
No, but I don't really know, because to be honest, it was the first time she's ever saw him. Unless...
Do you think the infatuation began after that meeting?
I think that was the minute he opened that door and she laid eyes on him, that was the beginning of her delusion. I think so. I mean, I don't know. This is my opinion.
Speculating. Yeah.
This is my opinion here. When she finally broke her silence on the phone call, after Deborah yelled at her, she explained in an eerily calm voice that she plans to kill them.
But creepy. I know. I just got goosebumps.
Whilst letting it known that she knew the addresses of her flat, which is in Poole, Dorset, the location of the moored barge, and Jan's second home in Epsom, Surrey, which means that she had by that time already done some severe stalking.
Oh, she did her research.
Exactly. So the event of the phone call where finally their stalker broke their silence and spoke for the first time to Deborah, it triggered enough wariness in the couple, that they decided to alert the police in Dorset, where they were at the time at Deborah's flat. But since they did not know exactly who the person was, they obviously knew that it was a foreign-sounding woman, but didn't know exactly who it was, and the doctor hadn't put two and two together as in who that person might be. They had no name or no suspect in mind. There was very little that the Dorset police could do to help them. Further on, in December 2002, the boat of Dr. Falkowski, Mad Pals, was broken into, and all the lights were left on. Once again, the police was unable to assist because there was no evidence of who had broken into the boat. The harassment campaign against Jan Falkowski took a life of its own and also began targeting his workplace. His office at the hospital was receiving between 4 to 5 silent calls every morning and over 30 text messages a day. The police could not find out who the person was, they could only trace the calls to phone boxes near where the couple lived. In January 2003, the police advised them to find a safe house and not to tell anyone about it, including family. But yet again, the stalker still managed to find out that they had gone away for a romantic getaway in Brussels that very same month. And what did she do? She sent them a creepy text which read, "You can't run away for the weekend." Jan and Deborah only discussed the trip between themselves and had told no one. This led them to believe that their place had been bugged. However, a sweep of their home for electronic devices performed by the police proved unfruitful. The stalking comes to a boiling point as news of the couple's February 2003 engagement featured in both the Daily Telegraph and the NHS magazine, NHS being the National Health Service in the UK. Deborah would be the target of many threatening anonymous messages, and some of them read as follows: "Dig your own grave. Your life will end. Gunman paid." Another reads, "Bang, bang, bang is all you deserve." Then she ominously warned Deborah that she'd burned her down in her wedding dress. How crazy is that? If you try to picture this for a minute, it's an experience in itself, trying to look for your perfect wedding dress that suits you, that you fell in love with. Because to you, your wedding day is the best day of your life, right? So that's going to be something that's has to be memorable, that you're going to look at for the rest of your life in pictures. So imagine finding that perfect wedding dress, buying it, for someone to tarnish that image by telling you, well, I'm going to burn you down in that dress. And now every time that you look at your dress, all you can think about is someone plans to kill you in it. I don't know if I would want to wear it on the actual day, to be honest. The couple lived in fear. They could not trust anyone, fearing the stalker was within their circle. They could not understand how the person knew so much. In March 2003, the boat was yet again broken in two, where the cooker this time was turned on, which flooded the vessel with gas and could have caused a massive explosion. Thankfully, this was avoided. The Limehouse police investigated, but no evidence could be linked to anyone. By June, the couple's respective family had also become the target of this mad woman. Deborah's father received a call during his own father's funeral, claiming there was a £2,000 theft from his credit card, which later proved to be false. Deborah was by now receiving up to 10 death threats a day, being the target of horrible abuse simply because she was in a relationship with the subject of the stalker's obsession. She was even referred to as FDT in text, which stood for, I'm not going to say the whole word because that might not be appropriate, but it stood for effing Debbie Tart. As the wedding day was fast approaching, the threats became more and more serious. One reads, "I killed a tart before I go myself." Now this one was sent to Jan. Another one reads, "To Jan from C. Stop taking Debbie Tart to Mad Pals. Got key. 2 women may end up in Limehouse pool. Let Tart go now." This one was especially chilling to Jan because days before, a woman's body was found by the police in the marina near his houseboat. In August that year, Jan travelled around the country to take part in powerboat races, taking Deborah along. They began receiving phone calls in the area codes where they were both staying at, and it was so clear that their stalker was following them on their journey. Deborah received further text stating, "Your life will end before 6/9/03, which was the day the wedding was to take place at Saltern's Hotel in Poole. Even some of their relatives decided against attending in fear something bad would happen to them. And that fear was not completely unfounded, and you'll find out why in just a moment. The day before the ceremony, the former head chef at Salterns received text messages stating the food had been poisoned, all wedding guests would die, in an effort to stop the wedding from happening. By that time, the continuous harassment had taken a toll on the couple, who decided to call off the wedding secretly. But the police encouraged them to pretend everything was still going ahead, so they could try and catch the woman red-handed. They were certain that at least phone calls would be made. All police leave in Dorset was called off that day, and they were posted to watch phone boxes in the area. At 12:20 p.m., 2 officers noticed a woman walking into a phone box making 20 to 30 frantic texts and calls in a very short period of time. She was immediately apprehended. By October 2003, the couple parted ways, unfortunately, and by that time Jan had met and started a relationship with a young lady named Bethan Ansel, who is now his wife. Sadly, this was not to be the end of all of Jan's troubles. As CPS, which is the Crown Prosecution Service, announced in December 2003, they could not bring any charges against the woman for lack of evidence. As soon as her bail conditions were lifted, she went right back to contacting Jan again. For the most part, the doctor ignored it, and by that time Jan had put an end to his treatment of George Attard, the patient with whom the stalker was in a relationship with. But during a Christmas party in 2003, he received a phone call from her where she threatened to kill him. He immediately reported it to the police. But when she was called in for questioning, she found a way to reverse the situation. She alleged that during one of her visits at his hospital to her then partner George in 2002, that the doctor had drugged a coke and raped her. She provided a pair of her knickers to support her allegations. DNA tests proved to be his seminal fluids. Jan was promptly arrested for rape. His life started to fall apart. He waited 1.5 years under suspicion, during which the mad stalker rang his place of work to inform them that he was under suspicion of rape. The NHS swiftly suspended him, and he was not even allowed to contact anyone, colleague or patient to explain the situation. The defense hired a DNA expert who retested the evidence on the pair of knickers. The case against him fell apart when trace DNA of his new girlfriend, now wife, Bethan, were found in the mix, which proved implausible considering the alleged rape happened a whole year prior to the start of the new relationship. All charges were dropped, but Dr. Jan Fakalski's reputation took a serious hit as he lost a number of patients and his reputations, and some of which patients have never wanted to return back to him. So if there is a case that you would like us to discuss, a case you would like us to bring to light, to either help give it a little bit more attention or help you with putting it out there and talk about it, you are welcome to send us a private message on Pretty Criminal on Facebook, or you can also email us on unladylikeinvestigations@gmail.com. If you have stuck around and listened to our podcast to its entirety, we thank you very much. Thank you for sticking with us. And we hope that you'll come back and visit us and give us your support to grow and learn from what we're doing and to hopefully bring a light to many other cases around the world that needs to be talked about. Thank you. All right, before we check out, I'd just like to remind you to join us tomorrow on our roundtable discussion for this case, The Final Scoop. In the meantime, stay safe.